Colonel Al Worden, Apollo Command Module pilot. He flew to the moon aboard Apollo 15, where he took the furthest out spacewalk from Earth, a record he still holds today.
The Astronaut Scholarship Foundation serves as a consultant to the Astronaut Hall of Fame for NASA and the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. One of our duties is to supervise the selection process of the new astronauts for induction into the Hall of Fame.
The commander's job on a flight basically is to fly the lunar module down to the surface and bring it back up. And the command module pilot is to fly everything out there and back. And the lunar module pilot's job is basically a systems engineer. The launch was exciting. We're all sitting in there. Dave had his hand on the abort handle. I had my hand on his hand to make sure he didn't use it, and the accelerations and the vibrations and all that. And you know you're going somewhere when you're in one of those things.
Command Module pilot Al Worden became the first human to perform a spacewalk in lunar orbit.
The thing I had to do was recover the film cassettes from the two large cameras that I had in the back. One of them actually was about 90 pounds. It was, I'd say, 30 inches in diameter and about 12 inches thick, and it had 1,100 feet of film on it. And I had to carry that canister back into the command module and stow it for re-entry. It was kind of a fun thing. You're floating. I mean, what can I say, you're floating? I had a lanyard on my wrist with a hook on the end, and I hooked the handle of the canister in case I let go of it. And I just walked it, hand over hand, walked it back. What's funny about that is we had trained for that so much in the zero-G airplane that I was finished with what I had to do in about half the time I thought it was going to take me. And I thought, gosh, what can I do to stay out here a little longer now? Because I've done everything I'm supposed to do.
Now, when the main engine shut down, those retro rockets are trying to pull the first stage away from the rest of it, but they're still hooked up. So you go from 4.5 Gs one way to about a half a G the other way, and I remember us elbows and everything into the instrument panel trying to save everything, and Jim Irwin and I sitting there saying, God, we sure didn't expect this to happen, because that's something you can't do in simulation. Looking over at Dave, and Dave said, yeah, geez, I forgot to tell you guys about that.
Well, a ball of tomato soup floating around. The adhesion inside the bag was broken. The surface tension was broken. Big ball of tomato soup came out, and it was floating around. Now, this could be a very serious problem, because if that liquid got behind an instrument panel and started shorting out electrical circuits, you got a real problem. So you got to do some quick thinking. And this is one of the reasons I absolutely maintain that we send people into space, is to solve these kinds of problems. Because you'll never get a robot to come up with the solution to this problem. You can't touch this ball of soup with a spoon, because if you do, you break the surface tension. Now you got 1,000 little balls of soup floating around. You can't do it. We got under one of our couches and grabbed a towel and wrapped it around the ball of soup and absorbed it. That's why we send people to space, so we can figure these things out. It's very simple.
My first recollection of the space program was probably when I was a fighter pilot in the Air Force back in Washington, D.C., back in the late 50s. We all knew about Sputnik back in 57, in October of 57, and we knew kind of what was going to happen after that. And of course in 59 they selected the Mercury 7. I remember in 59 I was still in the fighter squadron, and we got to talking a lot about space program, and that was about the time that Chuck Yeager was talking about spam in a can. And so there were real questions about whether this was really real, or is the space program just going to be a kind of a distraction from real flying. But I remember talking about it in the squadron, and there's some things that happened later on that kind of brought the space program back to me. I remember thinking what a wonderful thing that would be to go into space. But you know, when you're so far away from it, you never really think that you're going to be part of it. It's something that so few people get to do, and you're in the vast majority of people that fly airplanes, of course, but there are a lot of things you got to do to get yourself ready for it.